fantastic time at the SWA Summit, it is an honor to introduce our next speaker, Dr. J. Marks. Dr. J. Marks is a widely respected educator who has been in education since 1991. Currently, Dr. Marks is a diversity and equity consultant within Oakland Schools, where he serves and supports the professional development needs of the 28 school districts within Oakland County. He is highly sought after for his work in the area of equity, focused on anti-racism, social justice, cultural competence, courageous conversations about race, culturally responsive teaching, educating African American males, and student engagement. Without further ado, I present Student as Allies for Social Justice with Dr. J. Marks.
Thank you for that kind and warm introduction. Again, welcome to Students as Allies for Social Justice, one of the breakout sessions for the Students Wellness and Leadership Conference 2020. Again, my name is Jay Marks. I'm a diversity and equity consultant with Oakland Schools, which is the intermediate school district in Oakland County. I have the great fortune, privilege, and pleasure of working with educators, students, and families on issues of race, ethnicity, culture, diversity, equity, and social justice in Oakland County. I want to introduce to you all the loves of my life, my beautiful daughters, Amari and Jalea. Amari is 17 years old. She's a high school senior. She's to your left. Jalea, the baby, my twin, is 14 years old. She's a high school freshman. And our family is really excited this year because it is the first and last time that our girls will be in high school together. But unfortunately, they're having that high school experience in their bedrooms because they're doing remote learning due to the pandemic. So we are hopeful that before the end of the school year, they will have an opportunity to spend some time on campus together as high school students. But these are my daughters, and I don't go anywhere to talk to anybody about anything without introducing my daughters, because I just feel so richly blessed. Of all the people in the world, God could have chosen to be their father. He chose me. And it's humbling. It's humbling. And I'm a proud daddy, as you can see. I want to acknowledge Trans Awareness Week, meaning November 13th to 19th, in recognition, honor, and celebration of members of LGBTQ plus community, and let you know that we're with you as allies, accomplices, and co-conspirators, okay? I want to share with you something I wrote a few years ago, just to get us to think about what if our society was different? What if our schools were different? And what if our communities were different? As I share these what if statements with you, I want you to try to see if you can connect to these statements in your personal life. If any of them connect with you and your identities, your experiences, your beliefs and perspectives, okay? And after I share these with you, I'll get into my talk, because these what if statements provide a context for everything I'm going to say afterwards, okay? It's called what if. What if? What if students didn't segregate themselves by race and ethnicity in the cafeteria, hallways, parking lots, and other open spaces in our schools? What if? What if students weren't bullied by their peers because of their differences, regardless of whether those differences are real or perceived? What if? What if we had the audacity to stand up and speak out against bullies instead of having to be a bystander to someone else's pain and oppression? What if? What if our Asian students were not stereotyped as the model minority, in that we expect them all to perform with excellence in our math and science classes, but as if they had nothing to contribute to the arts, social sciences, and language arts? What if? What if our poor students had as much access and opportunity as their non-economically disadvantaged peers? What if? What if students who identify themselves as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and or questioning could live in a society that was welcoming, accepting, and inclusive of difference, instead of one that marginalizes, condemns, and isolates them? What if? What if our social identities such as race, ethnicity, religion, language, etc., that students bring to the classroom were accepted and valued, like we want our identities accepted and valued by them? What if our racially and ethnically diverse students could feel free to express their cultural values instead of having to assimilate to the values of the dominant culture? Are we a melting pot or a salad bowl? Or maybe even a beautiful mosaic. What if African American males could freely walk the streets in their communities, and any community for that matter, without the threat and fear of being gunned down, in many instances, by the very people who are supposed to serve and protect them? Rest in peace, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, Jordan Davis, and so many others senselessly and unjustly killed, including George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. What if women and girls in our society benefited from equity, which provided them with as much access and opportunity as afforded to men and boys, particularly as it relates to educational tracking, employment, and income? What if those of us who benefit from privilege based on race, gender, socioeconomic status, education, and other social factors used our privilege to eliminate and eradicate practices that give us privilege in the first place in pursuit of equity? What if we had the courage as a society to engage in meaningful conversations about our differences, such as race and religion, instead of ignoring or avoiding them as if they don't matter? What if we made anti-racism, multiculturalism, and culturally responsive teaching a priority in our schools, rather than espousing and using pedagogical approaches that espouse the mindset and values of the majority dominant group? What if we recognize that the power of being a diverse community and society is that there's strength, not only in our similarities, but also in our differences? What if we recognize, in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere? Colleagues, family, what if? What if all these were true? What if? What if? I believe all of these can be true. I believe all these can be true if we work hard to partner with one another, align ourselves in each other's struggle, become allies, advocates, accomplices, and co-conspirators in the fight to eradicate any form of oppression. So we'll talk about social justice for a moment. And before I do that, I think it's important to define some terms that you know what I'm talking about when I talk about social justice. So here's a quick video. Literally, it's a quick video. It's like 63 seconds. So it's going to go quick, but it's going to kind of shed some light on when we talk about social justice, particularly how we articulate social justice and social justice issues in Oakland County, Michigan. This is what we're talking about, okay? Hopefully you enjoy it.
Social justice is.
Social justice is.
Social justice is.
Using your passions and talents to meet the needs of those around you. Giving a voice to the voiceless.
Social justice is access to education for everybody, regardless of age or geographic area.
Is making a conscious decision to live my daily actions for the betterment of humanity.
Social justice is.
Providing a listening ear to anyone who wants to talk.
Social justice is.
Remembering the sick, joining with them in their suffering, and celebrating in their healing.
Social justice is.
Providing housing for the homeless.
Social justice is.
Social justice is providing clean and safe drinking water for the billions who don't have it.
Using what you've been given to bless others around you.
Is seeing a need in your community and coming together to meet it.
What is social justice to you? Share your answer at www.whatissocialjustice.com.
So hopefully you're able to connect with one of the definitions and one of the ways that social justice was being identified and defined in that video. In Oakland County, Michigan, we define social justice this way through our social justice project. I have an opportunity to coordinate and facilitate for educators in our county. We define social justice this way. It is when an institution, such as a school or a school district, or a society that tries to expand equal opportunities and outcomes for all members of society, that challenges inequities and discrimination and promotes participation of all people. And you see there's an emphasis on the word all, right? All of us, right? And if we all don't matter, how can we say that any of us matter? If we're all not mattering, right? And if we're not looking for expanding equal opportunities for each and every one of us, equal access for each and every one of us who are members of our society. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to talk about three things. And these are the 3 steps to becoming an ally for social justice. And you could use the word ally. I know there's been a push to using the word accomplice, but there's also a greater push using the, looking at the work of Dr. Bettina Love, who talks about being a co-conspirator. But these are 3 steps to doing that work as an ally, accomplice, and or co-conspirator. 1, self-awareness. 2, awareness and acceptance of difference. And 3, becoming an ally for social justice. So let's go with the first step, self-awareness. This really speaks to who you are and what do you know about who you are and your own cultural and social identities. Do you know who you are as it relates to your own racial identity, ethnic, religion, language, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, nation of origin? But who are you? But also, what do you believe in? What do you value? What's important to you as an individual? What's important to your family? What's important to members of your cultural group? What prejudice, biases, and stereotypes do you have? What dispositions do you have about people who are different than you are? Yes, we all have biases. We all have prejudices. We all stereotype people. We all make assumptions about others who are different than we are. So what I tell people, having biases and stereotypes and prejudice doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person. It makes you a human being because our brains are wired to categorize people based on our experiences with them and stereotypes that we may have that are associated with them. So we're going to have biases. We're going to stereotype people. We're going to make assumptions. The goal is to develop the capacity to be aware of what they are so that you can counteract them when they show up. And that's what we can do. If you're aware of biases you have, if you're aware of assumptions that you make about groups of people, regardless of whether those differences are around race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status, ability, sexual orientation, if you're aware of those, you can pay attention to that. You can counteract them. That awareness will allow you to counteract them so that your words or actions don't hurt anyone else, right? Because when we're not aware of our biases, they manifest themselves into what we call microaggressions. And those are words and actions that we may take that may cause harm to someone else whom we have a bias against. We have to also ask ourselves and explore areas of our identity that give us privilege. And privilege simply means that you may receive unearned advantage based on your membership in a dominant group, right? So if you are a member of a dominant group in terms of social identities in this country, it doesn't mean that you didn't work hard for what you have. It doesn't mean that you didn't struggle in life. It doesn't mean that you have not or will not have hardships in life, right? We all have done that. It doesn't mean you didn't work hard in school and do all the things that you needed to do to prepare yourself to be successful. It simply means, based on your membership in one or more dominant groups in this country, you may have received some unearned advantages, okay? And for most of us, we have privileged identities, but we also have marginalized identities. And those are the identities by which you may have received oppression, you may have been discriminated against, you may have been stereotyped, or you may have been marginalized. I'll give you a couple examples of both, right? For me, when I look at my privileged identities, being a male in this society, a male-dominated society, gives me male privilege in this country. Being a Christian in this country gives me privilege. I could travel almost anywhere in this country and a lot of different places in the world. And I can go to these places, check into a hotel room, open up the nightstand, and what would I find? My book, the Bible. Not the Holy Quran, not the Torah, but the Bible, my book. And that's wonderful if you're a Christian. But what if you're Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, atheist. How does that impact you, right? I'm also middle class, which also affords me some unearned advantages because of my class, my social class. But then when I look at my marginalized identities, being a black male, a black man in this society, regardless of my level of education, my Christianity, my middle class status, my age, I am still discriminated against in this country. And I'm reminded of that identity almost on a daily basis as it relates to how that identity, how I am targeted, right, through oppressive behaviors, oppressive policies, and oppressive and discriminatory ideologies that marginalize me in my own country because of the color of my skin. So we have to be aware of who we are before we can step up and step into being an ally, accomplice, or co-conspirator for someone else. Because we have to know how we can use our privileged identities to help advance someone else's cause, and also be aware of our marginalized identities so that those don't get in the way of us working with someone else and aligning our efforts with someone else. Next, and before we get into the next one, I want to offer this quote by Marcus Garvey, which really summarizes why it's so important for us to do that first step. Marcus Garvey is one of my heroes, who said that a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And we all have roots. Do we know what those roots are? And do we know who we are? The second step is awareness and acceptance. Here, we need to do three things. One, we need to examine our own attitude and beliefs and begin to think about, when you think about difference, what do you think about? What is your attitude about difference? Do you subscribe to the notion of sameness, that we're all the same? Do you subscribe to the ideology and philosophy of colorblindness? I don't see race, right? That's not humanly possible. Race is one of the first identities that we notice. It's a descriptor, right? Or at least our perception of someone's race. Just like our perception of someone's gender, one of the first things we notice is a physical feature. Our perceptions of their age, and I say perceptions because we don't always know, right? You look at a person and you perceive them to be one racial group or another. You perceive them to belong to one gender group or another, right? One age group or another. We don't always know, but it's a physical feature along with body type, right? We notice it, right? And sameness can be dangerous, right? If you're subscribing to the notion that we're all the same, yes, we're all human beings and we share a humanity on this planet. That is true. But we're different. Because if you subscribe to the notion of sameness, then what does same look like? If I were to ask you to draw a picture of sameness, what does it look like? Oftentimes, people will start thinking of, in their head, imagining in their head, the dominant culture. And we're not all the same, right? And it's not okay to be colorblind, right? Because I want you to see me as a Black man. What I don't want you to do is discriminate against me because of it. Limit my access to opportunities because of it. Make assumptions about me and stereotype me because of it. Because if you don't see that, and being Black, my racial identity, being African-American, my ethnic identity, is a huge part of who I am. And if you don't see that in me, you don't see me. If you don't know that about me, you don't know me, right? How can we respond to pieces of identities that we don't even see? How can we even support that? How can we be an ally for what we don't see or acknowledge? So we have to examine our attitude and beliefs about diversity. Do we see diversity as an asset? Or do we see it as a detriment, a problem? We have to develop our awareness of other cultural groups. We need to read more. We need to read more. We need to diversify our friendship group. We need to ask ourselves, do members of my friendship group, do they all look like me? Do they all pray like me? Do they all love like me? Do they all eat like me? Right? And if the answer is yes, we need to ask ourselves why. Why do all my friends look like me, love like me, pray like me, eat like me? Right? And we could diversify our friendship groups in an authentic way. But we need to read more and learn more about one another so that when we show up to be an ally, when we show up to be an accomplice, we show up to be a co-conspirator, we're showing up with some information about the groups that we're trying to support. Right? And we're not putting the burden of their oppression solely on them. We're doing our own work. Then next, we need to appreciate difference as difference. There's a scholar named Roberto Chenet. He says we can look at cultural differences just as difference. Difference is difference. It's just a difference, right? We're just different, and that's okay. Because I don't know if difference is the problem in this country. I really don't think that difference is the problem in this country. I believe it is our disposition towards certain differences that create problems. But all differences aren't problems in this country, just like race. I don't think race is the problem in this country. I really don't. I think racism is the problem in this country. And those are two different things. We can acknowledge race. We can acknowledge racial, and we know race is a social construct. We know it's made up, right? None of us have a race chromosome, a race gene. There's no scientific basis or DNA connection when we talk about which race. It was made up by man. So we know that, right? We know that. But we can acknowledge our racial differences, our ethnic differences, right? Without being racist, right? Acknowledge them and support them. Why? Because it's just another difference. Just like our gender, our language, our religion, our sexual orientation, our social class, right? Because again, I don't know how we can celebrate diversity that we're not aware of. And I really don't know how we can celebrate and advance equity in places of diversity that we don't accept. Dr. Martin Luther King says, nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And what I've taken that to mean is, and ignorance, and now I'm thinking he's meaning ignorance in its purest sense, the absence of knowledge. We just don't know. And in this year of 2020, we can know more. We have these little things, phones, technology, computers. We have the Google, right? Where you could go on and find out more about people, right? Now you have to watch where you go, and you have to cross-reference what you learn with the people that you're working with. But we can know way more than we know about our cultural differences. There's no excuse for the level of ignorance that I feel that many of us display as it relates to our culture, our cultural differences. And finally, becoming an ally for social justice, which is our third final step. Becoming an ally simply means recognizing oppression and broadly standing in solidarity with anyone who experiences oppression, whether or not the ally also belongs to the targeted group. Meaning, you don't have to be a member of the targeted group to stand with someone who's targeted by racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other forms of oppression, right? Someone once told me, do you have to be one of to stand with? A colleague of mine, and what she meant by that, and that's Manira Mawusi. And what she meant by that, do you have to be a woman to stand up for women's rights? Do you have to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community to stand up for their human rights? Do you have to be a person of color to stand up against racism? Do you have to be a person who has an ability difference to stand up for what's right, just, and equitable for people who have different abilities? Do you have to be poor to stand with the impoverished? Yeah, and the answer is no. You can be an ally. You can be an accomplice, and you can be a co-conspirator. And the way that Dr. Bettina Love articulates being a co-conspirator she suggests it means that you're willing to put your life on the line to advance equity, to advance justice, to eradicate oppression for someone who's targeted by it. So we're going to watch this short video on 5 ways to be an ally. These are wonderful tips that you could take with you in your work as you pursue to be an ally for social justice.
Hey friends, so I'm trying something different with my setup and I don't know if it's working, but you will deal. Imagine your friend is building a house and they ask you to help, but you've never built a house before. So it'd probably be a good idea for you to put on some protective gear and listen to the person in charge. Otherwise, someone's gonna get seriously hurt. Look, I'm helping! It's the exact same idea when it comes to being an ally. An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of. We need your help building this house, but you probably should listen so you know what to do first. Let's do this. So here are my 5 tips for being a good ally. Understand your privilege. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the word privilege, so let me break it down for you nice and easy. Privilege does not mean that you are rich, that you've had an easy life, that everything's been handed to you and you've never had to struggle or work hard. All it means is that there are some things in life that you will not experience or ever have to think about just because of who you are. It's kind of like those horses that have those blinders on. They can see just fine. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on the side that they don't even know exists. So for example, there are currently 29 states where you can legally be fired for being gay, and there are 34 states where you can legally be fired for being trans. Now, as a straight cis woman, those are things that I don't have to ever think about if I don't want to. I'm not going to be fired because I'm straight, and I'm not going to be fired because I'm cis. So it makes sense that before I can fight for the rights of others, I have to understand what rights I have and others don't. That's privilege. Listen and do your homework. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not possible for you to learn if you aren't willing to listen. So you got to know when to zippa the lippa. I don't know. You get what I mean. But that's the thing that's so cool about social media. There are so many people sharing their stories all around the world and connecting with people that they normally would never get a chance to without the power of the internet. So do your homework. Start reading blogs, tweets, news articles, and stories so that you can get caught up on the issues that are important to the communities that you want to support. Speak up, but not over. If the Fight for Equality was a girl group, the ally wouldn't be the lead singer or the second lead singer. They'd be Michelle. An ally's job is to support. You want to make sure that you use your privilege and your voice to educate others, but make sure to do it in such a way that does not speak over the community members that you're trying to support or take credit for things that they are already saying. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane. Realize that you're going to make mistakes and apologize when you do. Nobody's perfect. Unlearning problematic things takes time and work, so you are bound to mess up and trip and fall. But don't worry, you can brush yourself off and get right back up. I'm back up! Just remember that it's not about your intent, it's about your impact. So when you get called out, make sure to listen, apologize, commit to changing your behavior, and move forward. Last but certainly not least, actually the most important thing on this list is remember that ally is a verb. Saying you're an ally is not enough. You gotta do the work. 1 through 4. 1 through 4. As always, there are links in the video description box. Some of the things I mentioned in this video, along with some resources that have been really helpful for me as I've gone along in my journey to be more conscious. So I want to hear from you in the comments. What are some sites that you suggest checking out, and what are some things that have helped you become a better ally? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and help see you when I see you. Bye! Hey friends, so I'm trying something different with my...
Hopefully you were able to connect with one of those 5 tips. Hopefully it made sense for you, made sense to you, and it's something that you'll look to incorporate in your work as an ally, accomplice, and co-conspirator. So a couple of more things, and then I'm gonna wrap up this conversation today. Just a couple more things to remember as it relates to becoming an ally for social justice. 1, don't be a bystander to injustice anywhere, anytime. If you see something, say something. If you see something, do something, right? You hear something, say something. See something, do something. Find your place in the fight for social justice. There's so much work to be done. And there's a place for all of us to find our place in this fight. When I showed you the video earlier, we talked about various types of social injustices that are occurring. Even when we look at our environment and environmental racism, that could be a place where you can fight, right? Fighting against sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, racism, and racial injustice, right? But find your place in the fight and fight for justice for all of us. Take action and do something. Listen and ask how you can help for groups that you're trying to work with. Don't expect another person to educate you about their identity or oppression. You have to do your own work. As the video shared with us, you have to be willing to do your own work, because that further perpetuates someone's oppression when you're depending on them to teach you about their oppression. The learning can't happen on their backs. We have to do our own work. Accept criticism thoughtfully. If you may mess up, which you will, I mess up all the time, acknowledge you messed up, ask for forgiveness. People tend to extend a lot of grace when you're really working hard to make changes and you're really working hard to advance equity, right? And particularly for their groups. But you have to be open to feedback when you mess up. Do speak up when you hear biased language. Again, do seek support from experienced allies within your own identity group. Find people who look like you, love like you, pray like you, who are also working to be an ally for social justice. See what they're doing. Align yourself with them so that you can learn from them and with them. But you can also share what you know with them as an ally. Don't expect credit, right? It's not that kind of work. It's work that we do collectively for our humanity. And don't selectively support one group over another. How can you be an ally for social justice, an accomplice for social justice, a co-conspirator, if certain levels and certain areas of injustice and inequities are cool with you? That's what we call hypocritical. So you're either working to become an ally for social justice, to advance equity, or you're not. Right? Which reminds me of this quote by Dr. King, who says, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. And can we really call ourselves the good people if we're silent in the face of someone else's oppression? So as I close, feel free to send me any questions that you may have regarding this topic and regarding what I shared with you. And I just want to leave you with this. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? That finger is pointing right at you to become an ally for social justice, equity, and peace. What are you going to do? Our late, great Congressman, Representative John Lewis, he cautions us and advises us, never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in what he calls good trouble, necessary trouble. And fighting for justice, that's good trouble. That's necessary trouble. And sometimes we have to make noise to do that. But whatever you do, do it out of love for our collective humanity. Because as Dr. King reminds us, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And he says hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And I believe there's a lot of hate going on in our society, in our world, in our communities, in our school right now. And how do we fight that? We fight that with love. So with that being said, I love you. I want to say Asante Sana, which is Swahili, for thank you very much for joining our session today. Take care. Peace and blessings to you.